Hello, my random viewers, and welcome to Randomly Offensive. Today we are talking about sound and how to use it properly. Now, sound is one of those most amazing things you can learn about. I love learning about sound, and I love explaining sound. And the reason I am doing it today is because not only can sound be the driving force that makes your content reach the greatness that you know it has the potential to reach, but explaining things is also the best way to further educate yourself, which is what I am now doing. It also gives me a chance to share with you guys some of the knowledge that I already have, and get to share my passion and love for creating with you guys as well. Now, when it comes to creating, calling myself a beginner is almost a compliment at this point, right? And the reason why is because I've always had stories that I've wanted to share with the world. I've always had ideas that I feel like I could transform into amazing content. However, I lack the attention spans to write books. I will be in the middle of writing, and then all of a sudden, before I know it, I am walking around the house like a lost puppy, stuck in a daydream about the scene that I am supposed to be writing, and I just can't get past that wall every single time. I'm starting to become like Brian from Family Guy, where I just cannot finish a book, and so I've given that up completely. And then, I also do not have the assets, nor the skill or money to go into movie production. But I do feel like I am able to use and take advantage of modern technology and go into podcasts, especially since you can upload audiobooks without a hard copy nowadays, which is incredible for me. It opens up a whole new door of opportunity. The problem is because of the style of my stories and because of the way I speak, sound is incredibly important for me to be able to tell the story that I need to tell. Because sound can tell a story that isn't actually shown in the movie or in the content or in the story. If you don't have time to delve upon someone's past, you can use sound to delve upon that person's past. Say you have a guy named Jackson, and Jackson has a tragic past, but you don't really have a whole lot of time to delve into it, but you want to hint upon it for possible future creations of said character. Well, now you can insert certain sounds, and what this will do is take advantage of people's subconscious and actually get them already in that mind frame of him being a tragic victim, whether that's in the past or now. And even if they don't know it, they are now in that mindset, and that's all you need. And that is why sound is so incredibly important, and I am trying to master it so that I can use it in the story I'm working on right now for my podcast, which will probably be ready in about 3 to 4 months. But with that being said, it just furthers the importance of sound for myself and for many other aspiring creators who struggle with the same type of problems that I too struggle with, or are limited by the position they were put in modern society. So, with that being said, and everything out of the way, let's actually delve into the information and education of using sound and using it properly to strengthen the bones and the muscle of your story. So going back to our example of Jackson, we have already established that we want Jackson to be a tragic character. However, we have not established that with the audience, nor are we going to in this story. However, we want to set up the possibility to explore it in the future. But we have to set up that possibility without taking away the spotlight from the main characters, because those are who you have to focus on in your first story. So, that is where sound comes in and plays an incredibly important role. The first one is with music. Say the majority of the main cast are more happy, hopeful characters. Well, you're going to have higher pitched, happy music playing in the background with a select amount of instruments to signify that happiness, that hopefulness. However, whenever Jackson is a part of that cast, the background music is going to add an instrument, preferably a low bass type instrument. In this case, we'll use an acoustic guitar that only plays a bass theme. Now, whenever that character is a part of the cast, by adding in that instrument, you are signifying to the audience subconsciously that you have just added in a character who is deeper, who has more bass, who has more tragedy, because you're changing it up, and it's going to bring attention to that character because of that subtle addition to the instrument. Now, say you have fight scenes. In these fight scenes, when the main cast is playing, you're gonna have happy, high-pitched music. Now, when Jackson is fighting, you're going to use the exact same music, but you're going to muffle it. What this means is you are signifying that he is just like the heroes. He's fighting for the same cause, hence the same type of music. However, by muffling it, you are signifying subconsciously that this character has more weight emotionally, because muffled music normally symbolizes weight. And by informing the audience through music that he has more weight behind his emotions, that is the best way to affect the audience, because the people attach their emotions to music more often than not. Now, going away from the music and more into the more subtle ways of using sound is through the sound of someone's punches and strikes, right? So with the main character, you are going to have a higher pitch, more snap ending type of strike, and I'll explain why later. With the villain, you will have a deeper, more booming sound when he strikes. Again, I'll explain that more later, but with the tragic character, his punches are going to be somewhat muffled, somewhat quiet, but it's going to have a booming effect when he strikes his opponent. What this signifies is that the emotions behind the attacker, which is in this case Jackson, is heavier. He has heavy emotions behind his strikes. He has issues. He has tragedy behind every strike. You want to resemble that in the sound of his attacks, because this, again, subconsciously will stick out to us. Now, real quick to finish up with Jackson are the sound of footsteps. Now, the sound of footsteps are incredibly important. You have to really focus on what sound your character makes when he is walking. Now, I'll explain more with the main character and the villain. However, for now, with Jackson, you are going to make his footsteps completely silent. And the reason for that is that the absence of sound will bring just as much attention as the involvement of sound, right? So when there is sound all over the place and you're always hearing sounds in your daily life and in movies, you will be drawn to the absence of sound. When something doesn't make a sound, it catches your attention. So you are bringing more attention to this character without taking the spotlight away from the main characters. And the silence creates mystery. They're going to try to figure out why his footsteps have no silence. Now, this isn't going to improve upon his tragedy. This isn't going to allow you to expose your tragic character, but it is going to create interest, again, very subtly, subconsciously, because they don't realize that they are noticing the absence of sound, but subconsciously they are, and now they are invested in the character without taking their investment away from the main characters. Now, I talk about not taking away the spotlight from the main characters because the main characters are incredibly important to the story. Those are the characters that the story is about. Henceforth, you want all the attention on them. So why did I talk about Jackson, a supporting character, first? Well, because statistically, when you are creating a story, the side character tends to be the creator's favorite character. And the reason for this is if you put your favorite character, if you put a character that would be your favorite as the main protagonist, it is not going to connect with the majority because you will tend to make this character perfect on accident. However, if you create a side character in the image of what your favorite character would be, well, now what's going to happen is you will not have the ability to make him perfect because he cannot outshine the main character. And since the main character is not your favorite character, you are going to naturally give him flaws. And his story is going to abstract away from the side character, but it's also going to affect the side character's story arc. The side character will not be able to be as perfect as you might have made him if he's a main character, because the side character is actually going to damage his story arc a little bit. And this sounds bad, but it is absolutely not. This is a good thing. All characters must be relatable. And so that's why I talked about Jackson first, because for the most part, he's going to be your favorite character as a creator because he is the side character, and that is a rule of thumb to make your favorite version of a character the side character, to humanize them and the main protagonists. So with that explanation out of the way, we can now talk about the sounds you would want to use for a protagonist. Now, in this case, we are going to want the protagonist a happy, always smiling, hopeful character. And his character arc is going to involve him having to struggle with being happy, is going to struggle with always smiling because of the things he sees, and he's going to struggle with hope. He's going to have to latch onto hope. Now, how do you signify that with sound? Now, obviously, since he is a main character, you have the liberty to show, tell, and experience these things, but music and sound still has a huge part to play in this. So let's go back to the sound of strikes, punching, and kicking, right? At the beginning of the main protagonist's story, you are going to have his punches high-pitched and loud, like I mentioned earlier. However, as the story goes on and continues, his punches are going to become silent and quieter and deeper. And the reason why is because throughout the film, you're going to have him go through punishment. You're going to have him go through pain. You're going to have him lose people. And by losing people and going through pain, this character is going to be experiencing change of emotion. He is going to become a darker, less hopeful, less happy character. And so you are going to show that and express that through the sound of his strikes. His strikes now sound more lethal. His strikes now sound like they are putting more of an effort to kill the guy instead of just injure the guy. So you are going to incorporate the sound of his strikes with the morals of the character, and by doing that, you're realizing that the morals of your character has changed. And this is going to cause the audience to either want him to go back, or they like the change and they want him to go forth. And sound can, in this way, now be used as your advantage, because based off the audience's receptiveness of that sound, you now know where to take the character. Now, using the same logic, this is where you put sound into the footsteps. The footsteps are going to be they're going to sound light, because you don't want the character to come off intimidating, unless that's the style of character you're creating. Then you do want his footsteps to sound intimidating. You're going to put more depth behind the sounds, more of a boom. Right? And then say you want an underdog that eventually becomes a public figure, becomes a hero. Well, now you're going to not have an echo on the footsteps. So say the main protagonist, we're going to call him Sal. Say Sal has a more high-pitched footsteps showing his happiness. He's going to have a click at the end showing that he is more hyper. He's going to be a faster type character, a fast fighting type character, and he's going to use his legs more. That's what those sound steps are going to signify. That click at the end is going to signify speed, and the high-pitched footsteps are going to signify happiness. Now, with that being said, you don't want there to be an echo, because echoes signify the fact that there is a reputation around him, right? This guy has certain authority. He is infamous. He's famous. He has a reputation behind his footsteps. There will be no echo. Now, as the story continues, he's becoming a darker character. He's losing hope, so his footsteps become heavier sounding. His footsteps become more booming. And the click at the end is going to no longer be as high-pitched of a click. It's going to be more of a palm pat, right? Like, I can't do it. It's going to sound like that. So, With that, now you're making the character heavier. By reducing the symbolism of his speed, you are now improving upon the symbolism of his strength and his power because of the path that he's taking. Now his footsteps have more of an echo as the story goes on, showing that he's collecting more fame. He's building a reputation. He has more significance when he's in the room because his footsteps are echoing louder and longer. And this is how you can use sound to evolve your character and signify to the audience that your character is changing. Now, you don't want to make any of these sounds obvious. You don't want to make any of these sounds very loud, because for the most part, nobody really notices these sounds while the movie's playing unless you're really looking for it. And so you want all these sounds to be quiet enough to be subconscious. They have to be present, but you don't want them to overflow other sounds. A perfect example of how this works is they did an experiment where they took a particular movie scene and they played it with all the music, all the sound, and everything that it already had, and the reception of that scene was the exact same reception that the majority had when it hit theaters. However, when they played it in front of an audience with no music and none of the added sound, just the natural sound that the actors bring while filming, the reception of the movie was much different, and the audience actually didn't know much about the characters. Their knowledge of the character's story arc was actually lacking compared to the ones who watched it with all the added sound and the music. So, that is a very, very awesome example, said experiment, and I'm going to go ahead and it's been a few years now, and I don't know if it's in the public domain because I watched it when I was being educated, but if I can find it, I'm going to gladly put a link on it in the description. So, with that being said, it's time to move on to the villain, because the villain, again, is very oftentimes a favorite character from the creator, and creators want to make their villains a favorite for the audience because that's very beneficial. You want the audience to build a connection with the villain. That way there's investment and there is emotion between the conflict rising between the main character and the villain, especially if you have the villain kill off the side character, which is your favorite character, so you're going to make it very impactful. You're going to make it as good of a scene as you can, and the audience is going to have an emotional connection to that death scene because they understand that there is respect behind Jackson, but they also understand the villain, say Mo. They also understand that Mo is coming from a place that they actually can relate with, that they understand, but they don't agree with how he's going about it. And so when he kills Mo, it's going to create an emotional conflict within them, and that is going to cause more investment in your movie. Now, going back to the villain Mo, we have to first signify his footsteps and try to figure out what we want his footsteps to resemble. In this case, we want him to be a big, muscular, physical threat. We want him to be a threat through strength. So no intelligence, no genius type threat, no psychological threat, no financial threat. He is a physical threat. And so what we have to do is we have to make those footsteps heavy and somewhat quiet, but creating an echo that lasts longer than anyone else's and lasts longer than the main protagonist. For example, when you look at Raymond Reddington from Blacklist, his footsteps are quieter than everyone else's, but his echo lasts longer than anyone else's in the show. And what this does is it signifies to us that he has experience and a reputation that is bigger than anyone else's. He spent more time building this reputation than anyone else has. When Raymond Reddington walks into the room, you know that he has an infamous reputation with any character that he is confronting. You know that he has a lot of important reputations behind those footsteps. Now, you also have to signify that his strikes are brutal, since he is a physical threat. He is a physical force, right? And so we can use the Green Goblin from the Sam Raimi universe as a great example. When he strikes, they're not echoing or anything. They are keeping the pressure directly on the main protagonist, because if you were to create an echo, that is actually signifying that those punches are expanding through the air. But by eliminating any echo, you are signifying that every single punch is causing damage directly to the character. With a deeper, more bass style theme with his punches, the Green Goblin has established that his punches hurt, and his punches are coming from a dark place, and that his punches carry bad intentions behind every strike. And so this is how you properly use sound. Now, this isn't even going into the smaller details of like the sound of the glass, or the sound of a dish, or the sound of the door handle when the certain characters grab them. This is just a small sneak peek of what sound can do. You can effectively, and you don't even have to follow the rulebook when it comes to this. Like, if you want to try to establish something using sound, you can take advantage of the sound of what the doorknob makes when a certain character turns it. You can make a certain sound of a nail when a certain character is putting up drywall, if you're not making an action movie, right? If you are making more of a romance, you can edit the sounds of the sounds of the glass when they put the glass down, or the sound of the liquids when they're pouring the wine into the glass, to establish what kind of character you are pushing forth upon the audience. So you can edit sound in any way. So when you're creating, and in my case, when I'm doing a podcast, since that's all you're going to be hearing is my voice and sound, and hearing about the characters, you have got to really focus on the sounds that you actually forget about, because you hear them so often, you don't realize they have any strength behind them, but they do. Sounds have so much depth, and you can tell an entire story just using sound. Now, I know this was not the fun, more sarcastic style of videos that I have been putting out lately, and I will definitely keep putting those out because they're my most liked, they're the funnest for me to make, and they get the most views, which is great since I lost Poke the Wokes on YouTube. So, the reason I'm making this video is because I'm going to have to do these more calmer styled videos in order to continue setting up my future projects, so that I can talk about the passionate things that make me more comfortable and be willing to talk and make jokes in order to make it as enjoyable for you guys as possible. So if you did make it this far, thank you very much for watching. Please do consider hitting the like and subscribe, and yeah, do not get hit by a meteor. Take care of yourselves. Bye.